said, I still need you. He said, nobody else can do what I want you to do. That's why I created you. He said that I am the one who knows who you are. I'll take you near and I'll take you far. He said, I'll never leave you alone. You'll never be on your own. He said, now, Bob, don't you worry. Don't you fret. I've never broken one promise yet. You must begin to see you are important to me. Then he told me I still want you. He said, I still need you. He said, nobody else can do what I want you to do. That's why I created. I still want you. He said, I still need you. Nobody else can do what I want you to do. That's why I created you. We're all going through something today, and I thought this would be appropriate in memory of Mr. Moses. Though the storms, they keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know he'll lead me safely to that blessed place he has prepared. But if the storms don't cease, and if the wind keeps on blowing in my life, my soul has been anchored in the Lord. Oh, sometimes I realize in this life we're gonna be tossed by the winds and the currents that seem so fierce. Well, and unmovable despite the time. But if the storms don't cease and the wind keeps on blowing in, my soul has been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul has been anchored in my soul's been anchored. Hey, my soul's been anchored. I want you to know the billows may roll, the breakers may dash. I shall not sway because he holds me fast. I said, stars in the night, the Lord in the sky. But I know it's all right. God knows it's all right. It's all right.
Put your hands together. It's all right. Put your hands together. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Amen. Period. Dot. Amen. We've come together to put our hands around the Moses family, and now it is their time to give family speeches. The members of the family of Bob Moses will now come forward, and each person will identify him or herself. Following that, we will have a devotional by Malika Moses and Nzinga Toll. And before they start, I would read some details about who they are and their journey to who they've become. So at this time, we have the Moses family speeches.
Glass.
Okay.
So when I think of my dad, I think of I love you and thank you. And so I've written a long list of thank yous that I want to share with him and share with you. Hey, Dad, thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for our time together. Thank you for Mississippi, for confronting yourself, for confronting America, for one person, one vote, for Freedom Now, for the MFDP, for getting up every time you were knocked down. Thank you for Mama, for Janet Jamont, for Black consciousness, for objecting to the Vietnam War, for Vonnie and Sugar and Craigie, for deciding to do family instead of movement. Thank you for Tanzania, for marrying Mama the first and second time, for Janet Moses, for becoming Baba our father, for the dirt road and brilliant constellations, for Aretha, who walked with us when Mama said, I was inconsolable, me in your arms, Mama said for hours until I fell asleep. Thank you for Hamisi. Thank you for cutting Yoka's head off. You became our hero then. Thank you for our first trip to Zanzibar, just me and you. You said I was fun to travel with, that I growled when I slept. Thank you for reminding me when I became a father that you and me were once like me and Johari. Hey, Baba. Thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for America. Thank you for Uncle Al, who made the arrangements and raised the money so that Bob Moses and his family could return home. Thank you for Peabody Terrace. Thank you for Emron and Frank and Marlon and the other children of Harvard University students. Thank you for Corporal Burns Park and the juvenile delinquents, for sitting us on the curb of the basketball court, for sharing your love of the game with us, for the safest place for a black boy to grow up in America, for Dip and Rudy, Pat and Ramil, for MB, for the black men and boys trying to grow wings and take flight out of America's cages. It is where I would plant my body, turn the rhythm of the bounce of the ball into a freedom song. Thank you for the Martin Luther King Jr. Open School, for understanding I needed to walk the hall like I wandered the dirt road in Tanzania. Thank you for Lynn Godfrey Phillips, for Danny, for Thomas, for Ho Ming. Thank you for the Blodgett Pool, for the Brunel's Gators Swim Club, for not letting me quit when the water was too cold, for encouraging me to swim, for the love of my body gliding through the water, for throwing us into that ocean infested with all those great white sharks, for the lessons that we could be champions, that there could be love amid all that hatred, that we could shape our minds and bodies to exceed what we and what others thought possible. Thank you for spanking us when Tab and I tried to quit, for telling us you'd never do that again, for not spanking at least me again, for trying to get me to understand that swimming could be a freedom song for Taba. Thank you for Uncle Lance, for Kwame, for Sam Cooke, for The Village, for Kwanzaa, for Ralph and Baba Ralph and Mama Miriama, for Poppy and Marshall. Hey, Baba, thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for all those train trips to visit Uncle Vincent and Aunt Rose and Rachel and Jonathan. Thank you for Uncle Vincent and Aunt Rose and Rachel and Jonathan, for democracy is life-giving and therefore spiritual. Thank you for marrying Mama a third time. Thank you for our first trip to Mississippi, overnight to Chicago, to Greenwood, to Cleveland, to Amzie Moore's funeral. Thank you for June Johnson and Hakeem. Thank you for Amzie. Thank you for 21 gun salutes, for the black men who fought for their country at home and overseas, for black patriots and black insurgents. Thank you for Amzie was my father in the movement, and Ella was my mother. Thank you for Ella Baker. Thank you for June's fried chicken, for hands woven into circles, for bodies swaying, for we shall not be moved, in this little light of mine, for freedom singers, for Curtis Mayfield, for Keep On Pushing, for Sweet Honey, for Bernice, for Room in the Circle, for Give Your Hands to Struggle, for Doc Anderson, for E.W. Steptoe, for C.C. Bryant, for Herbert Lee, for Jimmy Travis, for Willie Peacock, for Wazir, for Cortland Cox, for Judy Richardson, for Julian Bond, for Stokely, for Giat, for Joyce and Dory Ladner, for Uncle Charlie, for gently leading us into that circle so we could become children of the movement. Hey, Baba, thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for the port, for Moke and Fats, Colin and Dana, Deco and Daco, Hector and Alex, Ariel and Nando, for planting me and Taba in the heart of Black America, for letting us grow feral, for letting the streets become our teacher. Thank you for the Algebra Project, for making us do math on weekends and summers, for becoming our Fundi, for creating opportunities for us to become teachers, for reminding us every chance you got that the Algebra Project was our corner store, for Algebra para Todos, for math literacy as a key to citizenship in the 21st century, for Auntie Vida, for Jackie Rivers, for Margaret Burnham, for Jim Burris and Ben Moynihan and Bill Crombie and Dave Dennis and Cleetta Rouse and Doug Gills and B.J. Walker, for returning to Mississippi, for the Brinkley Middle School, for the Math Lab, for Miss Bird and Miss Wilkerson and Miss Ball and Miss Husband and Mr. Figures. Thank you for Mr. Figures, for the young people need to get their act together, for you can lead a meaningful life and struggle, for the Delta, for Shelby, for Hollandale, for West Tallahatchie, for Thelma McGee, for the Young People's Project, for YPP, for Java and April and Sammy and Dusty and Nate and Shantae and Darrell and Melvin and Demetria and Keisha and Shamika and Ariel and Jonathan and Kiki and Solidia and Ebony and Luther, for Cameo and Baby Cal and Tiffany and Tasana, for Helena, Taiwan, Kahinde, for Jesse, for JG, for Daron, for Boson, for Albert and Chris who imagined I was you and they were Curtis and Hollis, for all the trips up and down I-55, for the America we imagined, for the belief there was something we should do about it. Thank you for Kari, for our time together in Mississippi, for Big L.O., for Jakeem and Short Dog, for Helena, for Uncle Chizzy, for Bruce and Kesson, for my son Hector Acevedo, for Lori, for LaShonda, for Charlene, for Nama, for Reshma, for Jalita, for Candace and Tiffany, for Javier. Thank you, Baba, for our journey together, for all the gifts you've showered on us, the seeds of love, of courage, of liberation, of self-determination, of democracy that you've planted in our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our bodies, in America's toxic body. Thank you for the Harrowfish, for Pine Owl, for Liberty and Pops, for New Orleans, for Uncle Rudy, who told me when he was getting ready to leave his body that you don't owe anyone anything, you owe your kids everything. For Uncle Fred, for your brotherhood and friendship, for keeping the tradition alive and on the streets, for creating space for me and the kids to become part of that. For Jerome Smith and John O'Neill, for how can we make the conditions of life in the communities we live in better. For story circles, for finding our folk, for Benny Pete. Thank you for Benny Pete, for the Hot Eight, for the Black Men of Labor, for NASA and Orlando and Claudine Brown, for Kathy and John and Ella and Jaja. Thank you for letting our light shine amongst all your brilliance. An oak has fallen, a star has formed. Thank you for Fannie Lou Hamer, for Barack, for Danny and Gus, for Dennis and Ice, for Keith Griffin, for John Doerr, for Isaac Bird, for Mississippi Needs a Mega Evers with Money, for the 930 Blues Club, for the White Peril, for Black Brotherhood, for Big Psy, for Port Life, for Hustle to Eat, for Hot Taba, for Black Farmers, for Black Power, for William H. Moses, for there is a spirit of love, there is a spirit of justice, there is a spirit of protest, for cosmic consciousness, for life moving beyond our bodies, for your spirit guiding us from generation to generation, for the ancestors celebrating your arrival, for Greg and Louise, for Uncle Greg and Uncle Roger and Marie, for your family still bound to this planet, for Freddie and Chris, Christian, Judy, and Zakiya, for Val and Michael. Visit us sometimes in Mama's dreams, in Malika's dance, in Taba's homies, in Maisha's being, in the still of midnight, in precious memories. For God will take care of you, for we've come a long way to be together. For I don't believe you bring us this far to leave us. Thank you, Baba, for doing family and movement, for this everlasting journey. Thank you for Maisha. Thank you for Taba. Thank you for Malika. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for loving America. Thank you for, if you can't be with the one you love, then love the one you're with. Thank you for loving Mama and surrendering again and again and again. Thank you for all your sacred creations, for Zuri and Paris, for Krishna, for Johanna and Yara.
Yeah, so that's a tough act to follow. So, the first time I saw my dad cry, or speak in public, or quote the Bible, was in Mississippi at AMZ Moore's funeral. In Mississippi, he was Bob Moses, someone I spent the rest of my life getting to know. In Mississippi, I later learned who I was, in a sense, as when I was introduced in this way. Do you know who this is? This is Bob's daughter. And in Mississippi, that was enough. I grew to watch my dad talk a lot in public. In 2004, he gave the keynote speech for the winter commencement at the University of Michigan. My mom and I traveled with him. Usually he read for days, prepared pages of notes, and stayed up half the night before his talks. But I hadn't seen him do any of those things. I must have asked him 5 times, "Are you ready for your talk?" And each time he said matter-of-factly, "Yep." I was nervous for him, and of course so proud when he stood up to talk to the huge auditorium of people. And this is what he said, his whole talk in its entirety. "We are calling on the nation to have a conversation at the local, regional, and national levels about a constitutional amendment guaranteeing every child in the country a high-quality education." And then he said, "I'll say it again." And he did, and the whole audience cheered, and then he sat down. I've come to learn that my dad was ahead of his time. In hindsight, the Algebra Project was, in a sense, the crest of a long wave. My dad left behind an abundance of footsteps for us to follow, signs pointing the way to go. And someone once said that the best way to honor a great person's life is to pass qualities and walk in their footsteps. And so we will. I love you guys. And I love you guys. Thanks, Dad.
So, So my father was a lot. He meant a lot to a lot of people. I'm gonna talk about what he meant to me. So my father gambled. He gambled on me and my brother. He thought that if only Omo could be straight, we would both be good. So I tried being little brother, but that didn't work. And I drifted, but I never stopped paying attention. In 1982, I witnessed how much my father was loved when we went to Amzie Moore's funeral. Because we were Bob's children, we were embraced with love and hugs, and we were treated as though we were family. Daddy finally came home. In 1986, I saw my father in a New York City church, and he stood below the podium in silence, gathering his thoughts amongst his people. I witnessed the respect and the power my father commanded. And as they waited for him to speak, without saying a word, my father taught me that we were born to stand for something. In 1992, my pops tried to explain to me that my brother was a lot. He thought that I'd follow in my brother's footsteps, and he said that he had made a mistake. And I cut him short, and I told him that I loved who I am. And I thanked him for being who he was. Because without him, there would be no me. The father-son relationship hadn't worked out for us, so we both agreed to work on being friends. As life took me through the streets, and my father on a journey to figure out life after the movement, we went from two brothers and a father trying to figure out how to coexist to three brothers trying to figure out how to work together, even though we were on three different paths. Most people knew him as Bob Moses. I knew him as my father, who some people called Bob Moses, who I grew to call Pop, who became my brother. So all those who looked up to my father, tweeted his name, called him his hero, I hope you celebrate his life by turning your words into work. To all his grandchildren, four whom are mine, and the children whose lives he touched, from Mississippi to Liberty City, Oakland to LA, Brooklyn to Baltimore, Boston to Cambridge and beyond. Know that my father loves you, and I hope you celebrate his life by choosing to stand for something. There are leaders, and there are public speakers, and then there are organizers. Our country is in a constant state of guerrilla warfare against the Black community. The only way to know the people you can trust is if you are time-tested. These are the words of a father to his son. These are the words of Robert Parris Moses. Born and raised in Harlem River Projects by my grandfather, who everyone called Pop, and a grandmother, Paris Louise Moses, a beautiful Black woman who passed before her time. Robert Parris Moses Harlem River Little League baseball player, New York City basketball player, grandson of Baptist minister William H. Moses, Robert Parris Moses, the only black kid in his class at Stuyvesant High School, Hamilton graduate, math tutor to Frankie Lehman. And then he became Bob Moses. Shot at, beaten, imprisoned, soft-spoken, quiet, full of courage, fearless, relentless, unshakable, the leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the architect of Freedom Summer, co-founder of Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, genius, revolutionary, rebel, a man who put his life on the line for his people, a man who was willing to die for what he believed in. Bob Moses, Mississippi's most wanted, mentored by Ella Baker, protected by Amzie Moore, C.C. Bryant and Steptoe, looked up to by Dory Ladner, June Johnson, James Chaney and Stokely Carmichael, loved by Hollis Watkins, Dave Dennis, Willie Peacock and Chuck McDougal. Robert Parris Moses, who became Bob Moses, who became the oldest man ever to escape the draft, who survived the list, who went on the run until asylum was granted, who became a legend, who became my father, who fought for my name, who became my friend, who became Pop, who raised a son, who became a man, who became his brother. Until we meet again, may you always be loved, and may God always hold you in the hollow of his hands. I love you, Pop.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Malaika, number 4 in the lineup. It's so good to be with you all. I was thinking very carefully about what to say, what can I share with everyone, and what I kept hearing, 2 things. Your father is, and then nothing, just your father is, and also tell them all that I love them. And I think about, in my experience, my father, our father, grandfather, your husband, he still is. He's present with us, he's consoling us, he's supporting us. And so what I'm aware of is that the connection we have is a deep, deep love. And it's not just with our family, it's for all of us who have gathered here. And him saying, what I'm hearing him say, tell them all that I love them. What do we do in response to that? To share our love with him. There are maybe hundreds of us here. For him to receive our love silently and quietly is just such a great gift to him. He's given us so much. He's given the world so much. He's given the family so much. And we have done our little part. Each of us has done a little part to help him on his path. And at this point, we can certainly offer our love to him. So that's it.
I think so. And I can go right there. Right here? Okay. I would like to thank each and every one of you who has come out today
and the many of those who would have come from parts near and far, all who have worked odd and long hours to make this memorial celebration of Bob's possible. I especially want to thank our children and our grandchildren for taking Bob and I under their wings and in sight of their watchful eyes as Bob walked the last mile of his life. Zuri and Paris, you were his first grandchildren. When you were born, he dressed up to accompany you home from the hospital and delighted in being part of your young years, many of which had been spent in Florida. Paris, he followed your interests into the world of Aang, the boy avatar, and never tired of watching planet Earth. You regaled him with your knowledge of our planet's animals, and he was so proud of hearing about your achievements in school and on the basketball court. Zuri, he was pleased to hear that you had not backed down from the challenge of taking a Harvard Extension course in the 10th grade, and to know that your artistic talents were being applied to the art of floral arranging. Krishna spent the bulk of her last semester with us. Krishna, Grandpa was amazed by your independence of spirit, your razor-sharp wit, and your ability to find joy and purpose away from home and your friends. Johari, Grandpa loved to listen to your vast knowledge of the who's who of basketball this year, last year, and into the future of next year's competition. He was impressed by your facility with numbers and your skills as a chef in the kitchen. Sauteed spinach, your signature dish, was one of the foods he enjoyed as his appetite waned. Kamara, you are a master builder. And as all builders, you are persistent, patient, and precise. Your Lego constructions are exquisite. Grandpa ordered tables and chairs and a cabinet, hoping that his room would be a workplace for you, Johari, and Yoi, and Yara. Kamari, he was overjoyed to see you graduate from being afraid to put your face in the water to being able really to swim. Yoi, where is Yoi? Yeah. Grandpa loved for you to run in and out of his room and enjoyed listening to whatever you had to say. He delighted in watching you wag your little finger at the pictures of his gurus, and he was amazed watching you dive into the pool. He was happy to see pictures of your blowing bubbles and swimming underwater. Yara, Grandpa was so happy to see you attempt your first steps. Some time ago, when I don't really fully remember, Bob announced to me that he planned to die with his boots on. I cataloged this statement without comment, which was unlike our usual exchanges in which a statement was often followed by some retort. Raised by a mother who had learned Latin in a little schoolhouse in Greenville at the beginning of the 20th century in Greenville, South Carolina, I also noted that Bob did not say, "I shall die," but he said, "I will die with my boots on," a declaration of intent. And for all who knew Bob, certainly not a fashion statement. Will signaled intent. Shall merely marked a point in time. For the past year and a half, our children, along with their children, rotated going to Florida, thereby guaranteeing that Bob and I would never be left alone to our own devices for more than 2 or 3 days at a time. So on the 19th of July, on the last Boston to Miami flight, Taba came. Bob asked Taba how long he intended to stay with us in Florida. Taba responded that he had no plans to leave, that he was just here, and that he wasn't going anywhere. Bob thought for a moment, and then very matter-of-factly looked at Taba and said, "I want you to see me off." Taba promised that he would. On Friday, July 23rd, Bob began his day at 8:30 with a call to Danny, followed by another call to a fellow mathematician, followed by 2 more work calls, and at 6:30, Taba wheeled him down to the pool to rest in the rays of what would be his last sunset. By 2 or 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, with the help of the hospice nurse, Bob was finally able to sleep. And by 7 Sunday morning on July 25th, 36 hours after his last meeting, he took his last breath. His will was indomitable. He taught by example. Our family learned how to live a life, a full, meaningful life, by struggling to manifest, even in the smallest of ways, a vision for the liberation of our people. I miss him. He will linger in my mind and heart forever.
Malika Moses is blessed to be Bob and Janet's number 4. She and her dear friend Nzenga Tull began dancing together as students at Spelman College, where they were fellow classmates in the math department. They are alumni of the Giwani Mata Dance Ensemble. After completing her studies in math and engineering, Nzenga joined the engineering and technology company co-founded by her father, Knox Tull Jr., and was part of the team responsible for communications for the Hubble telescope. As a child of 6 years old, Nzenga's father spent hours driving around Hampton, Virginia with Bob's uncle, Bill Moses, chairman of the university's architecture department, helping Bill to hand out voter registration flyers. Malika is an artist who works in educational publishing. Malika is also the proud mother of Krishna Moses Mitchell. Improvisational music will be gifted to us by Ben Moynihan, Bob's longtime and loyal Algebra Project colleague, and Bob's brother-in-law, Grammy Award-winning bassist Jeremy Mott. As I listened to the words from the family about their father, I believe it was Omo or Taba that said, referred to their dad as a patriot. And being a military service member of 26 years, people often say, thank you for your service. And I have often had a void in wondering what that service was for. But when I heard you say that today, when I heard all of the accolades that you said concerning your dad, that filled that void today, and I have a permanent picture in a soul to put there. So I want to thank you. Can we give them a round of applause? Our next musical selection will be from Miss Betty Mae Fikes and Chuck Neblett. Known as the Voice of Selma movement campaigns, rarely did a mass meeting in Selma happen without Betty Mae Fikes. From the time she was a teenager, she often led marches and opened mass meetings with song, wrapping her gospel roots around the music of the movement. Betty Mae is a recorded gospel, jazz, and blues artist. Chuck Neblett was a founding member of the SNCC Freedom Singers, the primary musical voice of the movement. As the brass singer of the group, he traveled around the country spreading awareness of movement campaigns and raising needed funds. A civil rights activist in his own right, he was jailed multiple times for activism. Today, he joins Betty Mae Fikes, his musical comrade.
Giving reverence to God this morning, to my queen, to my mentor, family and friends. This is not a funeral, but a homegoing service. So let's stand and act as if we're in a mass meeting. Bob is here with us. Chuck, we're gonna rearrange it a little. Whoa, this little light of mine, yeah. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. My Lord, this little light of mine, yeah. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, everywhere I go, Lord. Gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, my Lord, everywhere I go, yeah. Now let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you. That was for Bob. I wish you could have been there to see old Jordan Road. Bob was a gentle giant. And one of the main reasons that I'm still here today, doing the things that I'm doing today. We have come so far and still have so far to go. But this May, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. He has helped so many as we toiled alone. Then my living shall not be in vain. I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long. Been in the storm so long, but I'm trying to make heaven my home. Yeah.
You know, I met Bob when I was about 21 years old. I was working in Mississippi, and he told me, and they wanted to form a group called Freedom Singers to travel around the country and carry the message of the movement and raise funds. And I didn't want to leave the project, and I was going to go and be a part of this group. And Bob set me down, and his the only way he knew how, quiet, serious, told me that what I was about to do was just as important as being down in Mississippi. He said that they needed me, and he thought I should go. And that's how I joined the Freedom Singers. Paul and Silas bound in jail, had no money for to go their bed. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. You know, Paul and Silas began to shout. The jail doors open and they walked out. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Hold on, why don't you hold on?
You know I never been to heaven, but I've been told streets up there are paved with gold. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Hold on, why don't you hold on?
You know the only thing that we did wrong, stayed in the wilderness a day too long. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. You know the only thing that we did right was the day we decided to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on,
why don't you hold
on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Amen. We needed that. Needed that. We need that as our seasoned warriors leave us a lineage of things to contemplate and think about the journey. The movement family speeches, Danny Glover, Mr. Danny Glover, Miss Margaret Burnham, Alvin Poussant, Dave and Mr. Dave Dennis, Mr. Alvin Poussant and Mr. Dave Dennis. I'm going to read a bit of their bio before they come. Alvin Poussant, distinguished psychiatrist and professor emeritus of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Poussant is one of Bob's oldest and dearest friends, beginning in the corridors of New York City's prestigious Stuyvesant High School, if I said that correctly, until the day Bob died. They were steadfast friends. Shortly after Dr. Poussant completed his medical residency, Bob presented him with a dilemma. Would he interrupt the trajectory of his career in medicine to go south to serve the health care needs of Mississippi's SNCC insurgents? It was a relatively easy decision. Alvin packed his bags and was Mississippi bound, eventually founding the Medical Committee of Human Rights, and the rest is history. Mr. Danny Glover is a world-renowned actor and activist who has devoted his career and his talents to the struggle for human rights and his people, and for people all around the world. He has been a board member of the Algebra Project for 21 years and a Moses family friend. In January of 2022, the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences, the Oscars, will honor Danny with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award for his many decades of activism and public service. Ms. Margaret Burnham, a legal scholar and activist, Margaret Burnham has been central to national and international civil rights and restorative justice efforts for decades. President Biden has tasked her with the job of developing an archive of lynchings from the 1920s to the present. A board member of the Algebra Project, she has been a mentee of Bob Moses since she was 19 years old in SNCC in Mississippi in the early 1960s. Mr. Dave Dennis, freedom rider and legendary leader of the student movement in Louisiana, Dave Dennis joined Bob in directing Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964. It was in Neshoba County, the site of Dave's project, where the bodies of civil rights workers Cheney, Goodman, and Schooner were found. For 3 decades, Dave and Bob collaborated their work, organizing communities around the country for education and constitutional right. Dave continues the work. Won't you give them a hand as they come? Mr. Alvin Poussaint is the first bio that I read. If you're
Hello, hello. I miss Bob. I miss Bob deeply. I think all of us miss Bob. The country misses Bob. Bob, as long as I've known him, has been one of the most caring, sincere people I have ever known during my lifetime. And in America, besides being a dedicated person to help change America, he's been also one of our most outstanding leaders in terms of social justice and equity in the United States. Now, belying this leadership that he's always shown, he always has a very calm, soft-spoken exterior, but that really covers up the passion and devotion he had to civil rights and human rights for all Americans. All of us would like to be like Bob. I know that I at times wish to be like Bob, but you can't be, because Bob is unique. I first met Bob back in 1949 as a freshman student at Stuyvesant High School in New York City. Bob and I were freshmen together, a few blacks in a sea of white students. We became quick friends. In fact, Bob's personality was pretty much the same. He was sincere, humble, ingratiating, and easy to relate to. He had a sincerity and earnestness about him. And while he was serious about his studies, he was also very devoted to basketball. We shared a job together at NYU Medical Library, mostly because Bob could use me as a substitute librarian so he could go off and play basketball for the high school team. Bob lived in public housing in Harlem. I lived in East Harlem. Bob had a very tiny apartment, very small, and there were no extras. It was public housing. I remember one time Bob early on came down to my house and he was hungry and he wanted something to eat. So I served him soup and a fresh loaf of Wonder Bread. He devoured practically the whole loaf of bread with the soup. And I teased him for the next 40 years about eating that loaf of bread. We did well at Stuyvesant, and we were ready for college. And our guidance counselor suggested Howard University, and Fisk University. Bob went to Hamilton College so he could play basketball, and I went to Columbia. We stayed in touch regularly, and I introduced him to some of my left-wing friends from Camp Wochika. Wochika stands for Workers' Children's Camp. Bob didn't like it very much. He said all I did was sing songs. Bob connected with his own group of progressive students with the Quakers in New York and went on from there to do all of his great work in the civil rights movement. A reminder that he left for Mississippi to encourage voter registration in 1960. That's about 3 or 4 years before the major activity started. Then this led to the summer of '64, where the 3 civil rights workers were murdered, and Bob was extremely traumatized, as well as the other workers. And that's where I reunited with Bob very briefly. He flew out to Los Angeles, where I was finishing my training, to recruit me to come to Mississippi to work as a physician to help the civil rights workers and to help desegregate the health facilities all over the South. After listening to Bob, as terrified as I was, I said I would do it for about 2 years. Who can say no to Bob? Bob and Janet left for Canada and for Tanzania, disappeared from sight. Then they returned in the 1970s when amnesty was granted to people who had evaded the draft. Bob came home to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and after working in the Cambridge schools, he became very concerned with the lack of progress of black students, especially in math. And out of that grew the incredible innovative algebra project, which Bob devoted himself to in an unparalleled fashion and with devotion. His commitment was absolutely selfless. As a board member, along with Danny Glover, I remember once trying to get Bob to accept a raise in his salary because he was doing so much work for the algebra project. But he refused. He said the money should go to hire another student for the project. That was the way Bob was. Bob was so much more than a hero. He was a game changer. He was also my dear friend. I miss him. We all miss him with love. But his spirit will live on, life everlasting. Amen.
Good morning, all. We see you, Bob Moses, as we sit here in this church. We see your bravery as you and Curtis Hayes and Steptoe and Lee gathered our people at that citizenship school in Mount Pilgrim Church in Macomb. You could have died that day, Bob. You could have died on any one of those days, and dead is what that year they meant for you to be. But Bob, you lived, you did not die. We see you, Bob Moses, as we sat in that auditorium in Oxford, taking in the news from Neshoba, drop by drop. You knew they were gone, and something of you died that day with them that day. We saw it as we sat in that bitter quiet, waiting, just waiting. We see you, Bob Parrish Moses, as we sit together today. We see you in a Greenwood Freedom House in the school, circled up with the kids while their parents watch warily and worriedly from the front porch of their houses. We see you, Bob Moses, sitting across from Julian and Foreman and Ivanhoe and Stembridge in that cluttered, windowless office in Atlanta, and on Lynch Street in Jackson, the plate glass bombed out. May you rest in peace and in power. We see you, Parrish Moses, as we sit here today. As we gather here today, we see you in flight from this country whose course you changed. You're going home. You're going to the continent, escaping, hiding, and then resurrected and emerging in a small village in Dar, in the school class, and in a radio station in Cairo. We see you teaching, Bob Moses, everywhere and everyone. Lanier, Overton, Boys High in Brooklyn, the US Congress, the Mathematics Industrial Complex. We see you doing proofs to prove the infinite ways in which the system is broke. We see you considering all the possible values to find the fix. We see you, Bob Moses, on School Street, raising up those children that Janet bequested you, swimming with Maisha and arguing with Omo and dancing with Taba and praying with Malika. We see you, Bob Moses. When we see you, Bob Moses, we close our eyes and we see you, Bob, and Janet is with you, leading you and following you and reading you and healing you and laughing with and laughing at you. You and Janet, Janet and you, walking the streets of the port, year after year, place and struggle laid on struggle. We see you, Bob. We see you, Janet. Janet and Bob. Bob and Janet. We see you. Our eyes are closed and we see you. That slow, broad smile, the chuckle, the honesty and pain and wisdom and joy and silence in those eyes of yours. We see you, Bob Moses. Those crooked, delicate fingers, your straight back that never bowed even in its dying days. Godspeed, Bob Moses, you rarest of humans, you genius teacher, you precious friend. We see you as we sit here together in this church, Bob Moses.
Good morning. I first met Bob Moses in 1962. I was doing some work in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we had a large group of students who had been kicked out of Southern University for demonstrating. This is January of 1962. So we had all these kids who were living in a hotel called the Lincoln Hotel, and the owner, it was black-owned, owner gave us the second floor. So we had about 30 or 40 students living in this place, and we had 2 big sacks of grits, and a hot plate that we had and that's where we ate grits cooked so many different ways until I didn't want to see grits for a while. So one day, one of the young people came and said, Dave, there's a guy out there wants to talk to you. So I said, who is it? He said, some guy, he says Bob Moses or something. So I had heard about Bob Moses and the work he was doing in Macomb. So I went there, and it was Bob and a group of SNCC people. And they came down to want to recruit. If these students didn't know what they wanted to do, didn't want to do something, they can come with me to Macomb. We got a lot of work to do. So we talked for a while, and he explained to me what was going on and he really got my attention. Because at this particular time in my life, I was at crossroads. Because I've been participating in demonstrations and stuff like this, but I didn't see any real progress. So I'm trying to think, what am I going to do? I'm the first kid to graduate from high school in my entire family, an opportunity to go to college. You know, what am I doing? What am I doing? I don't see progress. So I was really at crossroads. So Bob left, and I really told him the kids that voted that they didn't want to go. But you know Bob, you don't say no to Bob, right? So Bob came, February he came back. This time he had reinforcements. Chuck McDew and Dion Diamond came with him, plus a couple other people. And so we talked again, and for this time he spent practically the whole day talking to me. And so he's really answering a lot of the questions I had about what should I be doing. So I really became very interested in what was going on in Mississippi. So that convinced me that maybe there's something changed. So that conversation with Bob really caused me to, when CORE had, the CORE person in Mississippi was Tom Gaither, that got ready to leave. And I decided that I would take Tom Gaither's place. So I went to Mississippi in April of 1962. It was my first pieces. And it was because of Bob, that crossroads. So that became history to a large extent. You said one thing that the second time I was in that same kind of crossroads, a little bit different. I'm telling this story is because I really want to talk to you about how important Bob is to me in my life. I want to be very personal about it. So I went on, after I left the movement in 1965, left Mississippi rather, I went back to school, got a law degree and stuff and I really had a tough time. I went 25 years of my life really in hell, you might say, not knowing where I was, what I was doing. I didn't understand the impact of what the movement had on me and on a lot of us who spent those years in Mississippi, Bob included. I didn't know anything about PTSD and stuff is. I know the impact that being 3 years of doing what we were doing would have on our lives. That was all of us. That I found out the hard way. So in this struggle, I was really at the bottom of the pit almost. And in 1989, I had not seen Bob since 1965. When he passed back through New Orleans, where I was, before he left and went to Canada. So this time it was in 1989, we had there was a movie came out called Mississippi Burning. And everybody was upset about it. SNCC people, CORE people, other people involved in the movement, because it was nothing but a bunch of lies. I mean, what Mississippi burning is one of the worst lies, a takeover of America trying to change the narrative about Freedom Summer. So we all met in Mississippi in a hotel on Capitol Street where we were staying at South Bob for the time. So every morning at 4 o'clock, Bob and I would meet by the swimming pool, and we would have these conversations about what was going on in his life and my life. And so every day, my wife was with me, and so she would say, "How did the conversation go?" I'd say, "Great, we really, great." The third day, though, Bob started talking to me about something about algebra, mathematics, and civil rights. So my wife asked, "How did it go this time, today?" I said, "Well, I think my friend has lost it. He's totally lost his mind, you know." So anyway, Bob had a thing in his head, had come in his head about, that was another piece in the movement. He was getting ready, thinking about moving to Mississippi, into the Deep South with the Algebra Project. And at the same time, as he talked about I was doing some work in terms of trying to help organize communities. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And then right after that, here comes knocking on my door in Lafayette, Louisiana, with Bob and Janet, you know, just coming to visit, spend some time together. Then we ended up going to Memphis for the opening of the Civil Rights Museum there. We had a great time. But all this time, whispering in my ear, very persistent, is Bob Moses about the Algebra Project and what it could mean about going back south, what it could mean in Mississippi. And I think that the Southern Region Council come up with some money to help us do that. And so finally what happened is I took that on because Bob took me to Chicago, Cleata and them, to see what it was like in the public school system. Because my kids at that time were going to private schools, Catholic schools and stuff. And so I didn't have an understanding of what was going on in the public school system. I had become that divorced from the real life when you talk about my doing this, going on the downward track. And so that sort of pulled out when I understand what he was talking about. And so I decided then, and I told Bob, I will give you 3 years of my life. Right, this was now 1991. And so I'll give you 3 years of my life. That's all, Bob, on this project, but I believe I'm doing it. I'm still here. Right? Now, the importance of this is, in terms of what Bob did to my life is, I do believe today is that if Bob had not come along with this algebra project, because I still think Bob knew from the first day when we talked in 1989 is that I was in serious trouble. I needed help. And my brother was there to help me and pick me up. If it had not been for Bob Moses, I would not have survived long at all this because I was on such a downward path you just don't understand. Changed my life around, got involved with the Algebra Project and the work I've done this, and I pledged myself. And I told God, if you help me through this, there would be no more things like practicing law, whatever else. I dedicate my life to the movement and to children in this country of color. And God opened the door, and Bob was there with his hands out. We had a thing going on the Algebra Project, and I also got the Southern Initiative, which some people thought was because we had a split. It was not a split, it was just a division of work. And so when you had these boards, and the boards started coming up with all these papers and stuff that we had to sign, agreements now, we had to do, it's all formalized, So one day in one of these board meetings, Bob stood up and he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Dave and I have never signed anything. So all we had was a handshake, and that was enough for me." And I said, "It was enough for me too, but we still had to sign these papers." all this legal stuff is, Margaret. But at any rate is that I want to just mention one other thing is, I don't think people really understood the importance of the challenge of the Democratic Party. What happened there is with Bob, through Bob's leadership, now let me make one thing clear. Mississippi had a movement going on before we got there. Mississippi had grassroots leadership going on there before we got there. You heard Maisha and others talk about the Steptoes, the Amzie Moores, and the others there. They had been moving and doing things in the civil rights movement and voter registration and dying for years. Medgar Evers was a true leader before we even thought about going to Mississippi. So it was always a paved road was set there, because in those days it was revolutionary to even have an NAACP card. People buried them in the cans in the backyards and stuff. So to say what happened there is to take these people and to move this grassroots level, to say we're challenging the powers, the greatest of this country, face to face in that Democratic Convention hearing. Teamsters Union, Congress, what do you have? The whole party, both parties, right, really. Big business. The people from Mississippi, grassroots, stood face to face and said, give freedom for all or none at all. We're not taking no token prizes or gifts from you. So that became so important, so big in this country, that this country mobilized from the top all the way down is to defeat what this was all about. One of the things that I always be grateful to Bob and them doing is to introduce me to one of the greatest families I've ever met in my life, that's the Moses family. But that was also a model of the type family that we used to have as a people. Our extended family and communities was what we had. Was our power base. And when you talked about the fact is what that demonstrated, what COFO demonstrated, and the people going there to that Democratic Convention is, demonstrate the power of that grassroots extended family that existed among black people in this country. Now, so the stage was set, as Bob called the Mississippi Theater. So they came after us, and they haven't stopped. First, they gave us what we talk about, the 64th Civil Rights Act, which I call the Trojan horse of the civil rights movement. Because what was built in that was all kind of things and acts and programs to defeat and destroy our power base, which is our extended family structure. First, you had the Moynihan Report, remember that? Black people were blamed for the problems and issues that exist. Then what you had coming after that was the whole piece of urban renewal, remember that? Where they put these super highways, expressways, right down to black communities, especially where the economic development existed. New Orleans, Claiborne Avenue, one of the most beautiful streets ever. North Carolina, Tulsa, destroyed the black community. That was intentional. The poverty program was designed to drain off the leadership in the black communities. And so what did we end up with? We had villages. We had our own stores. We had an economic base that people keep trying to take things that we did not have. And what Bob was able to do with this organizing Mississippi was to demonstrate that power. And they came after us with these other programs to destroy, and as a result of that, what we ended up with, we don't have any more communities. We do not have any more villages for our people, our kids. So it's stuck in some places. We have now what you call food deserts. We never had that. We never had the fact is about no child went hungry. We were children of the community, not just children of any biological parents. If I did something wrong down the street, my neighbors would say, "Ho, wait, Sonny." But if I did something good, they would say, "Sonny, we heard you did something good." I came up in a single-parent home, primarily my grandparents. Never did know my dad. But I do remember I had a whole bunch of daddies. When I walked down the street, the men took care of it. You walk by a bar room and they say, hey, watch that child. You know, we had communities, we had our villages. And what Bob demonstrated is the power of that. He brought it to life. And they struck back. So what we need to do as a people, we're going to take our villages back and rebuild. In the name of Bob, keep on pushing as he pushes. You know, this demonstration of how that can be done. We need more COFOs. We need to determine how we can be able to deal with that power base and stuff, the young people we see. We need to deal with the family structures as have been demonstrated up here tonight. In the name of Bob Moses, let's go back to the roots of our people, make it happen. I love you, Bob.
We'll now have a music selection from Brother Larry Watson. As he comes, a good housekeeping note, there's a young lady walking around here named Zora. She has done an amazing job at the schedule, and it's my job as shepherd to move us along. Let's give her a hand.
Mr. Dennis Montgomery on piano. I want to say to Janet and the family, I want to thank you all for allowing Bob and Janet to give so much to everybody. She has no idea the conversations that she's had with me spontaneously that lifted me up. So I want to say thank you to the family for sharing your mother and father. And I'd like you all to join in with me on this piece as we segue to these selections. Come too far from where we started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. If you know it, sing it with me. Come on, folks, black folks, come on. I don't feel no waste time. I've come too far from where nobody told me. Nobody told me the road would be easy. Well, I don't believe he brought me this far. Sing it! I don't believe he brought me. I don't believe I'm striving, trying to make it through this barren land. But as I go from day to day, I can hear my Savior say, "Bless me, child, come on and hold my hand." Sing it with me now. I'm climbing up on the rough side of the mountain. Holding down His powerful hand. I'm climbing up, I'm going on up on the rough side of the mountain. I'm doing my best to make it in. I'm coming up, Lord, I'm coming up. Oh, although my burden way down, sometimes they press me down, but I got to keep my faith. I have the strength to run this race. I'm looking and looking for my starry crown. I'm looking for my Lord to deliver me. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sing with me. I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. Come on, y'all, sing that chorus. Come on. I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. I'm doing my best to make it in. I said I'm doing my best to make it in.
Amen. We're going to hear from Mr. Danny Glover at this time.
Good morning. I'm to Maisha, Janet, Malika, Omo, Taba, and the extended family. I'm often late to a lot of things in life. Sometimes I catch a plane and I fly in and I fly out. This is the one moment that I certainly didn't want to be late to. I remember in 1999 in North Carolina, we were finishing up a little project that was dear to me, Freedom Song. We had fought for it, to get it, to find it, to recover it and get it done. And in my trailer walks Rudy Lombard, Chuck McDew, Dave Dennis, and Bob Moses. I was overwhelmed, shocked. I know how important the film was for me, because standing in front of me were 4 men who were represented the body of how I saw myself as a teenager. In some way, not knowing how to articulate it, but having it articulated for me through the images of them and thousands of others who did that work as a child growing up in San Francisco, California. And it was one of the great moments for me. And as if I felt I was a part of them. From doing that film in Mississippi and everything, I felt that I was a part of them in that sense. And to be able to have them talk about an idea about algebra and math literacy, 21st century, all the ideas. You're trying to grasp something, not simply as an artist, yes, but trying to grasp something where you become part of the public space. And that space was open to me to be a part of that. I say that because that's the memorable moments. But the memorable moments, the moments of being with any of them, whether it was Dave Dennis in a classroom with young kids, knowing emphatically that their ideas are reaching them, imagining the human beings that they could become, will become. And there's so many of them throughout the Algebra Project, the Young People's Program, and those who are also influenced by that. But to be around that crystallization of ideas, feelings, emotions, and passion, to watch Bob in a classroom listening as if he was listening to sharecroppers in 1963, 62, listening, taking notes on that pad he'd have, taking notes. And I never really realized, I was too embarrassed to kind of stare at him, because maybe I should be trying to take some notes as well. But to see that, and to see the wonderment of that realize itself, and knowing that at the same time that you had an ally there who not only shares the passion and belief of the extraordinary possibilities of those young kids in every single classroom. I don't care if it's in Jackson, Mississippi, or if it's in Berkeley, California, or in all the other places, the many places that we travel, and had an opportunity to watch that and have the sense of your own value as well, and the own value extended beyond what we all know, but a larger value. And to be captured by that, and about imagination in ways was something that I can never forget as a part of my life. And I want to thank you for all to be here, that you're here at this moment celebrating just a beautiful spirit, that's little smile, that little generous smile in the sense, and to be there. We were sitting at Taba's wedding, the two of us sitting, and I felt like these two old men sitting. And there were a group of Ethiopian girls. It must have been almost a dozen of them. And they were sitting there, and they were standing there, and they were trying to figure out, they knew they're trying to figure out why would people wanted to take pictures with me. And I was saying, why did they need to want to take pictures with me? They were talking about they needed to be taking pictures with the father-in-law. You know what I'm saying? And it's those are some of the ideas that we have to carry on. And all of us, we have to carry on. And His Spirit lives in every single one of us. He's with us. He continues to with us in those moments that we need Him most, when we doubt, when we smile, or when we see the achievements of our young children. We're going to smile, and we're going to remember one of the most beautiful men that I've ever met in my life, one of the most beautiful spirits that I have ever met in my life. We're going to smile and say, yes, anything's possible. Thank you.
Now we want Mr. Ben Moynihan to come on behalf of the Algebra Project. And immediate following him, we want to get Dr. Cordell West up.
Hi, everybody. I'm grateful to be joining you all this morning with our hearts full and aching as we appreciate and reflect on Bob's life. First, I too would like to thank you, Janet, Malika, Omo, Taba, and the entire Moses family, extended family, for gathering us here, together with everyone joining us on the live stream. It's humbling to think of the Moses family's generosity of support. It's incalculable as we consider Bob's work over these many years. Thank you for sharing Bob with us. Listening to our collective reflections, we are vividly reminded that in his public life, Bob worked tirelessly to create opportunities for the transformation of people and communities. He always sought to ensure that the people affected by and struggling to change deep societal problems would be centrally involved in designing and carrying out the solutions to those problems. Prescient in his focus across 4 decades, Bob operationalized efforts to raise the floor of math literacy, cultivating a consensus with students, teachers, parents, community organizers, school leaders, researchers, mathematics educators, mathematicians, and more to build effective opportunities that bring hope to our students, to our communities, and to our country. So on behalf of the Algebra Project team, we remain steadfast and focused on stewarding Bob's vision for using mathematics as an organizing tool to guarantee quality education for all children in America. And like so many of us we've heard from this morning, Bob also amplified hope and a sense of purpose in me personally. I met Bob in the spring of 1989, just before I turned 24. I had a lot more hair then. I met him at a civil rights conference at Dartmouth College. Janet was there. Taba was there. Malika was there too. I had just returned from 6 months' study of West African hand drumming in Senegal, and I recognized Bob's name from books I was reading at the time about the Mississippi Summer Project, as I had been brought up with a family story that my African-American birth father and European-American birth mother might have met while volunteering in the Summer Project of '64. And while that dimension of my story later took a different turn, Bob and I stayed in touch. In the summer of 1991, Bob asked me to join the Alger Project to develop an experiential African drums and ratios curriculum for 4th and 5th graders, wedding African diasporic drum making and drumming for students to have another way in to studying mathematics. And several of the folks who worked on that are here or joining us online: Bill Crombie, Lynn Godfrey, John Belcher, Staffis Broussard, and more. As the Alger Project grew in the mid-90s, Bob asked me to get involved in operations, and working with Bob and the project team has been central to my life for 30 years. His vision animates us as we continue working with students and teachers on, as he put it, what to teach, how to teach it, and how to assess what is being taught and learned. And together with a multitude of schools, organizations, and institutions, we continue to follow Bob in catalyzing a national We the People Math Literacy for All Alliance that is expanding math learning in and outside of schools, and also is calling on the nation and the federal government to ensure that young people and teachers have the resources necessary for securing math literacy and a quality education worthy of this 21st century. Bob has been an elder, a teacher, a leader, a mentor, and a father figure to me. I've had the privilege of watching him do the same with great patience and care with countless students, teachers, and colleagues over the last 3 decades. In honor of Bob's vocation, his calling to organize for the transformation of people throughout his life, I'd like to read an excerpt from Khalil Gibran's book, The Prophet on Work. You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. Always you have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save where there is urge, and all urge is blind, save where there is knowledge, and all knowledge is vain, save when there is work, and all work is empty, save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself, to one another, and to God. Work is love made visible. Bob made his love visible every day. His exemplary life inspires us all to work together to ensure young people have the structured opportunities needed to secure math literacy, not only for their participation in the information age, but also in order to eradicate racism from education in the United States of America. It remains for all of us, younger and older together, to respond to Bob's call. So thank you, Bob, for sharing your spirit, your struggle to improve education and to improve our world. Thank you all. Thank you.
Dr. Cornel West, a friend of the family since the late 1970s, Cornel West and Bob were kindred spirits. One of our most prolific public intellectuals, West has authored more than 20 books. He has the courage of his convictions and unafraid to speak his mind. Open quote, "You can't lead the people if you don't love the people, and you can't save the people if you don't serve the people," close quote. These statements are from Dr. West, resonate with Bob's truth.
Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you beneath his wings. God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day on the way. I know he will. He will take care of you. God will. And I know y'all short on time, so I'm going to say it one more time. God will. And I say it one more time, and then I'll let y'all have it. God will. I know God will take care of you.
Elroy for that song. Next voice you'll hear will be Dr. Cornel West.
Yes, I come from a tradition that says the Spirit will not descend without song. Give it up for our dear sister Donna. Let us not be deceived. Let us be clear that our dear brother, my dear brother, Bob Moses, he was a spiritual genius of the highest order. He was an intellectual titan linking the world of ideas to action. The second PhD student at Harvard in philosophy since Alain Locke in 1918, and went on to say what? I'll take your degree, but I won't forget service to my people. Oh, that's Bob Moses. He was a courageous colossal. He was a titan of tremendous proportion. And I'm going to say about him what I heard him say about Martin Luther King Jr., namely that he was a mighty wave in a large ocean of those who came before, who bequeathed to him the highest level of what the Greeks call arete, but what we call excellence, what we call vision, what we call courage, and most importantly, what we call love. Love of truth. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. Love of beauty, love of goodness, and yes, indeed, love of the holy. His grandfather, the great William Henry Moses, part of my own gut bucket Holy Ghost Baptist denomination. The National Baptist Association, known as the Baptist Garvey, his son, the founder of the architecture department at Hampton, and his brother was the father of our dear brother and old sister Louise, his blessed mother. Let us not forget his parents as we salute him. And then there is the one and only Janet herself, full of so much grace, full of so much dignity. They are a dynamic duel in the life of the mind and spirit and action. Let us never, ever overlook the fact that our dear brother Bob Moses, just look at his eyes, look at his smile, look at his face, and you see in a long, rich tradition of a great people. Never in the history of the modern world has there been a people who have been hated so chronically and yet keep dishing out love warriors beyond description. We don't have words for Brother Bob Moses. We don't have a language adequate for Brother Bob Moses, but he's part of that love ocean. You see Harriet Tubman, you see Sojourner Truth, you see Ida B. Wells Barnett, you see Martin King and Malcolm X, you see some Curtis Mayfield and some Aretha Franklin and some Sly Stone. We see it in the hear it in the music. Bob Moses was such a humble brother, didn't have a fake bone in his body, didn't have a phony moment in his blood. How did he do it? He decided to be a love warrior in the face of all of that white supremacist hatred coming at him, straightening his back up. And Brother Martin used to say, anytime an oppressed people straighten their backs up, you're going somewhere, because folk can't ride your back unless it's bent. That's our brother Bob Moses. Never in the history of the modern world has there been a people so terrorized, yet keep dishing out love. Freedom fighters, there's an intimate connection between being a love warrior and a freedom fighter. Because when you love people, especially a people who have been taught to hate themselves, then you loathe the fact that they're being treated unfairly. You hate the fact they've been treated unjustly. And if you don't do something, the rocks are going to cry out. That is Bob Moses. Oh, what is this? This fire inside of me that won't allow me to hold my peace, whatever it is. Whatever it is, I'm going to bear witness to it. That's Bob Moses with his quiet dignity. Oh, Lord. He wasn't one of those Pied Piper leaders. Follow me and put me at the center. I want to be always at the core of what is talked about and what is highlighted. No, I'm here to love. I'm here to sacrifice. And let us be honest, it can be difficult loving black people. But Bob Moses knew you don't love black people in order for them to love you back. You love black people because they're worthy of being loved. They're worthy of being transformed. They're worthy of reaching their highest level. Why? Because he wasn't in it for popularity. He was in it for integrity. He wasn't in it for prosperity. He was in it for magnanimity. He wasn't in it because somehow it would make him more visible. No, he wanted invisible love work and have an impact on the least of these, such that when it came to his day, all of us could come together with the highest level of sincerity and authenticity and say, Bob Moses, you lived a life well done. We saw your love. We felt your love. We knew that when you smiled, it was like an Aretha Franklin concert or James Brown funk rendition. It went straight to our souls. It empowered us. It enabled us. And yes, indeed, You have to pay a cost. My own traditions told me for 60 years, the kingdom of God is within you, and everywhere you go, you ought to leave a little heaven behind. We are here because he left heaven behind in a hellish world. My tradition also tells me that if you really see Jesus clearly, then you're going to pick up your cross. You're going to have to cut against the grain. It might be in Gut Bucket, Jim Crow, Mississippi. You're going to find some of the best people in the world. Come on, Brother Amesy. Come on, CC. Come on, Fannie Lou. I know that you're there. You can help me survive and thrive. But oh, if you see, and if you love Jesus more dearly, it means that you are willing to give everything. We call it kenosis. Empty yourself. Give yourself. Curtis Mayfield put it this way in his classic for Gene Chandler way back on the south side of Chicago when he says, I've given you all of me and plan to give even more, baby. How you gonna give everything and then give some more? Ask Bob Moses. That's what he did. That's what he did every day. His family of nobility. That's what he did to me. Sister Malika would tell you when he gave Janet and he gave the cradle of Malika to my son Clifton 43 years ago. I said, y'all can't do that. That's her precious, just your precious baby cradle. He said, no, we here to give. I said, this is a special kind of brother. This is the kind of brother I'm not just going to learn from. I'm going to allow his own words and spirit to saturate me as a cracked vessel so that I can always remember what real greatness is. And by greatness, I'm not talking about gigantic reputation. I'm talking about the scope of your love. Because somewhere I read, he or she is greatest among you will be your servant. It's the depth of the cost you're willing to pay. And that's why here, 86 years later, we're here with a smile to hug our brother, never forget our brother, and most importantly, to allow the best of his life and his afterlife to be part of our lives. We're not here to be spectators. We're here to be participants in forces for truth and goodness and beauty coming out of the great tradition of black people that must go on. Why? Because black freedom struggle has been the leaven in the American democratic loaf. It would have gone stale a long time ago if it wasn't for black freedom fighters like Bob Moses. And for the world, there's never been a people that's so soulful. And soul ain't nothing but the sharing of a soothing sweetness against the backdrop of a grim catastrophe. And that's what Brother Bob Moses did. He shared a soothing sweetness so you could be sweet and kind and gentle and loving and still be a strong freedom fighter and still be willing to sacrifice. Always organizing like Ella Baker taught him, always mobilizing like Ella Baker taught him, but doing it in such a way that you are tied to what those Sly Stone call everyday people, what those James Cleveland call ordinary people. It's not going to be a question of looking up at your elites and trying to live vicariously through them as they resonate in their luxury. No! The measure of black progress is always going to be the least of these. It's always going to be those wrestling with mass incarceration. It's always going to be those wrestling with decrepit school systems and inadequate health care and unbelievably unavailable child care. That is the measure. That is Bob Moses. Let us forever try to live up to his standards as he tried to live up to those who came before. And let us keep in prayer the noble Moses family in all of their riches and all of their goodness.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to, first of all, we want to thank you for coming and supporting the Moses family. And we believe the Spirit descended as Dr. West was speaking. And we want housekeeping, we want you to stay in place as we escort the family out. The musicians are going to make their way in. They'll meet here, and we'll proceed out. As they're coming, I hope they're getting the word, I'm going to give the benediction. Receive the benediction. Lord, we thank you and we praise you for all that you've done through Robert Parris Moses and all that you've left behind in his family and all of the organizations that have the blessing of his presence still remaining in them. We thank you for the strength to continue his legacy. Now, Lord, we ask that your perfect peace, which surpasses all understanding, will guard the heart and mind of the Moses family. Continue to bear fruit in that legacy. Lift your countenance upon them. Guard their coming in and their going out. As we continue this day of celebration, may the joy of the Lord be their strength. And we ask your peace to be upon us. Order their steps and keep them moving as the drum majors for justice and for righteousness. We ask it all in your name. Amen, amen, amen. We'll wait on the band. If we could ask Brother Savage if you could lead us with your solo till they come in. Everyone remain seated.
I chose to start with brushes because Bob was a subtle person.
Thank you.